have been doing a lot of posting on the United Kingdom and their contribution, frankly, their source contribution to the drug trade, the drug trafficking trade. And so I've tried putting out this content because it is valid content in a myriad of different ways. And the problem is primarily myself because I'm really terrible at tech. Excuse me, I'm trying to wipe my makeup. And in that energy, I was talking to God about it, trying to figure out a way to get you the information because this is pretty profound. And so this is the best I could do. So in that energy, I am going to be reading to you from a U.S. Labor Party report. This U.S. Labor Party report was done by over 100 investigators, and it cites Great Britain as being the source of all organized crime, drug trafficking, everything, racism, all of it. And so in light of that, I am going to be reading this to you because I don't even know how else to get you the information. It's cumbersome. America is at war. For the first time since 1865, the battleground is not abroad, but on the streets and schools of American cities. Casualties registered in the course of the conflict are incomparably higher than at any other time in American history. We are fighting for our lives, and in the most literal sense, for the lives of our children. Until now, we have been losing. The enemy's most deadly weapon is dope. Unlike most wars, which force both combatants deeply into debt, in this undeclared war, the offensive power becomes wealthier and wealthier while the stupefied victim becomes impoverished. In return for destroying the minds and in many cases the lives of the 48 million Americans hit by this weapon, the enemy exacts a payment of $50 billion in retail drug sales alone in the United States and $200 billion worldwide. That $200 billion robbed from the world's productive sector is the slush fund for everything evil in the world, including political terrorism and including the murder of American presidents. There is not a parent thinking over the destruction of a child who really believes that drug abuse is a self-inflicted crime. Americans, no matter what else they have learned to tolerate, believe that the advancement of the next generation is part of the way things should be. If an entire generation of Americans is in jeopardy of being lost, then someone has done this to them. We will tell you precisely who has done this, who has the ability to control the flow of dope from the mountains of the Far East and the valleys of the Columbians to American high schools, who controls the banks which launder the $200 billion intake, who puppeteers the crime syndicates in charge of retail distribution, and who corrupts our political life. It is the same people against whom we fought the American Revolution, who set up the world opium trade a century and a half ago, and who run it today. The aristocratic and banking oligarchy of Great Britain. Look into the motionless stupor of the mind of a youth who has been sapped and destroyed by addiction. Incapable of reason, incapable of thought. Today's addicted youth lives for one thing: his fix, his high. Then consider the body count of Britain's opium war against the United States. Over 48 million Americans, mostly between the ages of 12 and 25, are officially known by the Drug Enforcement Administration to be frequent users of heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. Over 1/4 of the American people are severely wounded or dead in a war the country has not yet mobilized to fight. The Drug Enforcement Administration has released these statistics on drug use by Americans. Heroin, 500,000 daily users, 4 million occasional users. Cocaine, 575,000 users between the ages of 12 and 17. 4.5 million users between the ages of 18 and 25. 1 million users over the age of 25. Marijuana, 11 million daily users, 24 million occasional users. These figures do not include that portion of the population addicted to amphetamines, barbiturates, and hallucinogens. This figure alone, according to recent reports from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, constituted between 12 and 25% of all patients admitted to federally funded drug clinics during 1977. The last census taken of drug abuse in 1974, issued as a report to the president, calculated conservatively that close to 1.5 million Americans had gotten into trouble, been arrested, treated, or hospitalized through the use of amphetamines or barbiturates. When calculated for only youth of high school age, the rate of amphetamine and barbiturate use was 4 times as great as that of the adult population. Since the inauguration of Jimmy Carter, whole categories of drug abuse are no longer monitored. The computer system behind the Drug Enforcement Administration has been shut down. Behind that action is the grim fact that many of Mr. Carter's domestic policies advisors are on record as being committed to discriminalization of deadly drugs, beginning with marijuana. If such policies go through, statistics will be meaningless. Drug abuse will treble within months of legalization. The 200 billion take for the British drug traders will climb to 300 billion. How is the 200 billion monstrosity of world drug revenues hidden? In the most important way, it is not. The flow of narcotics and dirty money is conducted in the full light of day, the same way rum running was conducted during Prohibition. Only misdirection prevents the public from understanding who the enemy is. Massive crimes are not hidden under cover of darkness, but under the cover of an effective lie. The operative lie in this case is free enterprise. When Sam Bronfman sold his rotgut to American mobsters supplied by the old British distillers and financed by the old British banks, it was a matter of free enterprise. What the mob did with it after it crossed the American border was of no concern to him. When Meyer Lansky made his first heroin connection with the Britain's dope-trading Keswick family in Shanghai in 1920, the sale was legal, and it was in the light of day. What the mob did with the heroin later was not the responsibility of Britain's Far East traders. Now, when the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank launders the $10 billion annual flow of narcotic money through Hong Kong, is it anything but a matter of free enterprise where their deposits come from and their loans go? When the Bronfmans in Canada and the Jacobs family of Buffalo finance organized crime, is it anything more than free enterprise business relationship? The entire army of the enemy was built and functions under the open view of the public. In fact, the chain of interlocking free enterprise relationships that describes the flow of drugs and dirty money in and out of the United States only masks the type of conspiracies that Americans see not in pulp thrillers, but in nightmares. We will uncover these conspiracies, the spider's web of the British monarchy, the Italian surname organized crime syndicates, London's Zionist cover Zionist cover terrorist operation, the secrets of Peking's dope-running foreign intelligence organization. We will trace them all back to their common mother, the great aristocratic families of Britain. With this report, you will see your enemy as he is, behind the veil of misdirection, Past the Hollywood parodies of organized crime, we are now in sight of the day when we will turn the tide against the dope warriors of Great Britain by striking at the head of the beast. These are the same people in the Epstein files. This is the setting for what follows below. Narcotics are pouring in from abroad through a well-organized, efficient group of smugglers. 1/5 of the population abuses drugs, an epidemic surpassing any known since the Great Plague. Not only the poor, but the wealthy and the children of the wealthy have succumbed. Within the nation, organized crime displays its drug profits without shame, ruling local governments and threatening the integrity, even the national government. None of their opponents is safe from assassins, not even the chief of state. Law enforcement is in shambles. The moral fiber of the nation has deteriorated past the danger point. And one of the leading dope traffickers writes to his superiors abroad, "As long as this country maintains its drug traffic, there is not the slightest possibility that it will ever become a military threat, since the habit saps the vitality of the nation." The description is familiar, but we are not writing of America in 1978, but China in 1838, on the eve of the First Opium War, when Great Britain landed troops to compel China to ingest the poison distributed by British merchants. An American president lies dead of an assassin's bullet. Corrupt members of the cabinet cover the tracks leading to a conspiracy, including the leading narcotics mobs, ethnic-based secret societies, and a foreign government. The public does not believe that the assassin acted alone, but the weight of the cover-up, the silence of the leading press, and the deaths of witnesses blur the trail from the public's view. Was that the death of John F. Kennedy? It was also the death of Abraham Lincoln. During the last century, British finance, protected by British guns, controlled the world's narcotics traffic. The names of the families and institutions are known to the history student. Matheson, Keswick, Swire, Dent, Baring, and Rothschild. Jardine Matheson, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, the Chartered Bank, the Peninsular and Orient Steam Navigation Company. Britain's array of intelligence fronts ran a worldwide assassination bureau operating through occult secret societies, the Order of Zion, Mazzini's Mafia, and the Triads, or secret societies of heaven in China. Paging back over the records of the narcotics traffic and its wake of corruption and murder, the most uncanny feature of the opium-based Pax Britannica is how shamelessly, how publicly the dope runners operated. Opium trading for the British was not some sordid backstreet business, but an honored instrument of state policy. The mainstay of the exchequer, the subject of encomia from Britain's leading apostles of free trade, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, Thomas Malthus, James Mill, and John Stuart Mill. The poisoning of China and later the post-Civil War United States did not lead to prison, but to peerages. Great sectors of the Far East became devoted to the growing of the opium poppy, to the exclusion of food crops, to the extent that scores of millions of people depended utterly on the growing distribution and consumption of drugs. The Keswicks, Dents, Swires, and Barings still control the world flow of opiates from their stronghold in the British Crown colony of Hong Kong. Jardine Matheson, the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, and the Peninsular and Orient Steam Navigation Company still control the channels of production and distribution of the drugs from the Far East through the British Dominion of Canada into the United States. By an uninterrupted chain of succession, the descendants of the Triads, the Mafia, and the Order of Zion still promote drug traffic, dirty money transfers, political corruption, and an assassination bureau even more awesome than the conspiracy that claimed Abraham Lincoln's life. Of course, the drug revenues of this machine are no longer tallied in the published accounts of the British Exchequer, but the leading installations of the drug traffic are no more hidden than they were 100 years ago. From the Crown Colony of Hong Kong, the Hong Sheng Bank does what the Keswick set it up to do: provide centralized rediscounting facilities for the financing of the drug trade. Even the surnames of senior management are the same. Even today, the grand old names of prohibition liquor and dope running rouse the deep awareness of Americans. Bronfman, Kennedy, Lansky are the denizens of the India opium trade, of the prohibition mob, imprisoned in the history books and behind the movie screen. Not infrequently, the observer feels a momentary lapse in time and sees not a history book, but the morning newspaper, not the late night movie, but the evening television news set. The story we have set to tell happened twice. It first happened to China and now is happening in the United States, emphasizing that neither the names nor the hangouts of the criminals have changed. We begin by telling how it happened the first time. From 1715, when the British East India Company opened up its first Far East office in the Chinese port city of Canton, it has been official British Crown policy to foster mass-scale drug addiction against targeted foreign populations in order to impose a state of enforced backwardness and degradation, thereby maintaining British political control and looting rights. While the methods through which the British have conducted this opium war policy have shifted over the intervening 250 years, the commitment to the proliferation of mind-destroying drugs has been unswerving. It was the British Crown's categorical opposition to and hatred for scientific and technological progress that led to it adopting an opium war policy during the last decade of the 18th century. Having stifled the development of domestic manufacturing during the previous century, the British Crown found its treasury rapidly drained of silver reserves. The only payment the Chinese emperor would accept in exchange for silk, tea, and other commodities Britain imported. To reverse the silver exodus, which threatened to collapse the financial underpinnings of the British Empire, King George III mandated the East India Company to begin shipping large quantities of opium from Bengal into the British Crown colony of India into China. The dual objective was to favorably alter the balance of payments deficit and to foster drug addiction among China's Mandarin class. By the time of the American Revolution, East India Company opium trafficking into China was officially reported to be at a scale of 20 times the absolute limit of opium required for medical and related use. In a very direct sense, the founding fathers of the United States fought the American Revolution against the British Crown's opium policy. East India Company intelligence operative Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations spelled out the colonial looting policy against which the founding fathers rebelled. In that same document, as part of the same scheme to defend the empire, Smith advocated a massive increase of East India Company opium exporting into China. The dirty money culled from that opium trade made up a sizable portion of the war chest that financed Britain's deployment of the Hessian mercenaries into North America to attempt to crush the rebellion. The secret committee of the East India Company, under the direction of Lord Shelburne and company chairman George Baring, coordinated British secret intelligence's campaign of subversion and economic warfare against the newly constituted American Republic even before the ink had dried on the Treaty of Paris. After the American Revolution, Smith's call for a dramatic increase in opium exporting into China was enacted with a vengeance. From 1801 to 1820, official British figures placed the opium trade at approximately 5,000 chests per year. By the late 1820s, a network of trading companies operating under overall East India Company market control was founded to facilitate the trade. Some of these British opium houses included the biggest, Jardine, Matheson and Company Ltd, maintain an active hand in Far East heroin trafficking to this day. The establishment of these trading companies, the core of Britain's opium war infrastructure, fostered an epidemic scale increase in opium trafficking into China. By 1830 to 1831, the number of chests of opium brought into China increased fourfold to 18,956 chests. In 1836, the figure exceeded 30,000 chests. In financial terms, trade figures made available by both the British and Chinese governments showed that between 1829 and 1840, a total of 7 million silver dollars entered China, while 56 million silver dollars were sucked out by the soaring opium trade. When the Chinese emperor, confronted by a galloping drug addiction crisis, tried to crack down on the British trading companies and their dope smugglers, the British crown went to war. In 1839, the Chinese emperor appointed Lin Se-su, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, commissioner of Canton, to lead a campaign against opium. Lin launched a serious crackdown against the Triad gang sponsored by the British trading companies to smuggle the drugs out of the factory area and into the pores of the communities. The Triad Society, also known as the Society of Heaven and Earth, was a century-old feudalist religion cult that had been suppressed by the Manchu dynasty for its often violent opposition to the government's reform programs. The Triad group in Canton was profiled and cultivated by Jesuit and Church of England missionaries and recruited into the East India Trading Company's opium trade by the early 19th century. When Lin moved to arrest one of the British nationalists employed through the opium merchant houses, Crown Commissioner Captain Charles Elliot intervened to protect the drug smuggler with Her Majesty's fleet. And when Lin responded by laying siege to the factory warehouses holding the tea shipments about to sail for Britain until the merchants turned over their opium stockpiles, Elliot assured the British drug pushers that the Crown would take full responsibility for covering their losses. The British Crown had its casus belli. Matheson of the opium house Jardine Matheson joyously wrote his partner Jardine, then in London, conferring with Prime Minister Palmerston on how to pursue the pending war with China. The Chinese have fallen into the snare of rendering themselves directly liable to the Crown. To a close observer, it would seem as if the whole of Elliot's career was expressly designed to lead on the Chinese to commit themselves and produce a collision. Matheson concluded the correspondence, "I suppose war with China will be the next step." Indeed, on October 13, 1839, Palmerston set up a discreet dispatch to Elliot in Canton, informing him that an expeditionary force proceeding from India could be expected to reach Canton by March of 1840. In a follow-up secret dispatch dated November 23rd, Palmerston provided detailed instructions on how Elliot was to proceed with negotiations with the Chinese once they had been defeated by the British fleet. Palmerston's second dispatch was, in fact, modeled on a memorandum authored by Jardine, dated October 26, 1839, in which the opium pusher demanded 1. Full legalization of opium trade into China, 2. Compensation for the opium stockpiles confiscated by Lin to the tune of £2 million, 3. Territorial sovereignty for the British Crown over several designated offshore islands. In a simultaneous memorandum to the Prime Minister Jardine placed J&M's entire opium fleet at the disposal of the Crown to pursue war on China. The Chinese forces, decimated by 10 years of rampant opium addiction within the Imperial Army, proved no match for the British. The British fleet arrived in force and laid siege in June of 1840. While it encountered difficulties in Canton, its threat to the northern cities, particularly Nanking, forced the emperor to terms. Painfully aware that any prolonged conflict would merely strengthen Britain's bargaining position, he petitioned for a treaty ending the war. When Elliot forwarded to Palmerston a draft treaty of Chunpi in 1841, the Prime Minister rejected it out of hand, replying, "After all, our naval power is so strong that we can tell the Emperor what we mean to hold rather than what he should say he would cede." Palmerston ordered Elliot to demand admission of opium into China as an article of lawful commerce, increased indemnity payment, and British access to several additional Chinese ports. The Treaty of Nanking, signed in 1842, brought the British Crown an incredible sum of $21 million in silver, as well as extraterritorial control over the free port of Hong Kong, which to this day is the capital of Britain's global drug running. The First Opium War defined the proliferation of and profiteering from mind-destroying drugs as a cornerstone of the British imperial policy. Anyone who doubts this fact need only consider this policy statement issued by Lord Palmerston in a January 1840 communique to Lord Auckland, then Governor-General of India. The rivalship of European manufacturers is fast excluding our productions from the markets of Europe, and we must unremittingly endeavor to find other parts of the world new vents for our industry. If we succeed in our China expedition, Abyssinia, Arabia, the countries of the Indus, and new markets of China will be at no distant period give us a most important extension to the range of our foreign commerce. It is appropriate to conclude this summary profile of Britain's First Opium War by quoting from the 15th edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, published in 1977. What the brief biological sketch of Lin Se-su, the leader of the Chinese emperor's fight to defeat British drugging of the Chinese population, makes clear to the intelligent reader is that the British policy to this day has not changed 1 degree. He, Lin, did not comprehend the significance of the British demands for free trade and international equality, which were based on their concept of a commercial empire. This concept was a radical challenge to the Chinese world order, which knew only an empire and subject peoples. In a famous letter to Queen Victoria written when he arrived in Canton, Lin asked if she would allow the importation of such poisonous subject into her own country, and requested her to forbid her subjects to bring it into his. Lin relied on aggressive moral tone, meanwhile proceeding relentlessly against British merchants in a manner that could only insult their government. So we're going to stop, and I'm going to do a second live because I want to put the title of the video in the new live that I'm going to do. But I'm going to pick up, if you want to follow back along, I'm going to pick up on Britain's opium diplomacy. That's the section we're on. So I'm going to stop this live, and I'm going to do another one because I want to put the title of the feed in the